So a couple of caveats before we get into this. Firstly, there isn't going to be anything on the screen. This is intended just as something for you to listen to, something to have a discussion about. I'll be going into the comments after this and kind of having a chat about that, but we're having a chat about it on Discord, so I thought it was worth putting my thoughts into a better format, I hope. On the subject of that, second point, it's also 8 AM, and I haven't actually slept yet, so if it takes me a little longer to formulate certain things, you're going to have to bear with me here. Third point is this won't be the usual haha funny meme content that you might be used to on this channel or the main channel. This is just going to be a genuine discussion for maybe the first time ever, so just bear that in mind as we go ahead. If you're not into that, obviously, just move on. Just go on to the next video. So, as of today, obviously, I cancelled the playthrough of... And actually, this might be the first time some of you've heard this. I'm cancelling the playthrough of Fallout: The Frontier because of various different reasons. Me and Lisa did a Dark Souls video earlier, which I have since privated, mainly because A, it was immediately demonetized, and I don't want my channel being clapped or the metrics being affected by that. Secondly, because some other information has come to light since we recorded that, and it made things that I said during that objectively wrong. And I don't want to be perpetuating, I know I'm not that significant, I don't want to be perpetuating any form of incorrect information. So I thought I'd do my due diligence here and basically fix that. Address it, nip it in the bud before it maybe leads to other people saying the same thing just because they've heard me saying it. I should point out it was correct at the time of recording, but then something else came out and essentially cleared that up with regards to what I'm about to talk about here. So, with that series, it kind of led to a little bit of introspection about how I approached that playthrough and how I've kind of approached content so far on both the main and this channel here, and I kind of wanted to discuss that. So I'm going to break this video up into two parts. I'll give my honest opinion on the Fallout Frontier mod. I'm not going to comment on the controversy itself because I'm not qualified to talk about that, and I think a lot of the information is up in the air, and obviously it's very high drama right now, which I'm not particularly interested in, but I thought I at least needed to close that out and put a kind of bookend on that series, seeing as we've left it at episode 6 without seeing very much what it has to offer. And I'll also kind of discuss the objective facts about the Frontier. Again, everything's kind of up in the air. There's lots of high tension about that right now, but I can tell you what is true based on time of recording. So, for those of you who don't know, Fallout: The Frontier was a total conversion mod for Fallout New Vegas that we were playing 6 episodes of. It has been in development, as far as I recall, for 7 years now. So, 2012, I think it immediately... It was 2012, 2013, maybe even slightly over 7 years. I don't remember the original date, but it's been a long time. Let's phrase it that way. As of today, though, you can no longer download the mod from Nexus Mods, which is where I got it. It's been pulled from various different places, and I watched a small amount of the live stream with at least one of the devs. Somebody was hosting it. I don't know if they were a dev. They didn't refer to themselves as a dev, but they were addressing the other guy as a developer. I joined midway through, so I wasn't entirely on to the context of that one. It seems as if the mod may disappear entirely. It seems as if the mod may come back in some alternate form. What I can say for definite right now is that the mod is gone in its current form, the form we were playing, because of some various things surrounding it. Now, again, I'm only going to talk about what is objectively true here. The first thing is that one of the artists who created, I believe it was the artist who created the Pip-Boy icons, but it was one of the artists and one of the person who worked on the game. That is the important point. One of the people who worked on the mod had an account, an art account on some platform. Again, I'm not gonna assume here because I don't know for definite. They had an account on some platform which featured animated characters, some of which were underage or something along those lines. Again, I haven't looked into it, but this is fact. There were underage animated depicted characters on this person's profile. As a result, the mod team basically cut ties with them, and I think that is probably the main driving factor behind why the mod itself has been pulled, but for various other reasons. So that's all you really need to know. Leading up to this, it's quite dense. Since then, the developers have done a live stream where they basically accepted community questions, which was, I'm trying to speak objectively here, but this is my opinion, an absolute shit show. The host certainly wasn't helping the situation by some of his reactions. I understand from his perspective, he was trying to maybe inject a little bit of humor into what was otherwise quite a depressing and serious situation for the other developer, who sounded absolutely beat up about the whole thing. But it really didn't help anything at all. And it was around that time that I decided to leave. Now, the reasons I pulled it, and the reasons why I think a lot of other people, and again, might even contribute to why it was pulled itself, the reason why I've decided to not continue on with it on the channel is partly down to the fact that it's no longer publicly available. And, of course, the controversy surrounding why it's not publicly available. But also because there were choices made in the mod that I didn't know were actually in the mod at the time. Had I have known that, I wouldn't have made a series in the first place. Those were... Now, I shouldn't call them sex scenes because that's not accurate entirely. They were sexual depictions. Those of you who played Fallout 3, and I believe New Vegas as well. I actually can't think... Yeah, it is in New Vegas as well. When there are sexual interactions in that game, basically the screen will fade down, you'll hear some noises, then it'll fade back up and you get kind of a bonus. I think it's also the same in Fallout 4, isn't it? That was also in this, and it was implied during that, you could initiate this with animals. Specifically, there was a death claw. There was some questionable perk text about a dog. And again, this is all stuff I've actually seen myself. No, I haven't played it, but I've seen people sharing the text surrounding it, the kind of choices. Again, there isn't anything actually depicted, but there is obviously the text surrounding it there. And there was also an interaction with a lizard creature. So again, borderline implied bestiality, I suppose, is the most arbitrary way I can phrase that. So I don't personally want to have to edit around that. I just cannot be bothered with it. You know, there's a bunch of other games out there we could be playing on this channel. I don't really care about the content on this channel. It's just something for fun. This channel, as I've said before, is used for my warm-up videos. That is why I've pulled it, because having videos for warm-up that I have to do significant editing in, and it's currently in the middle of this huge controversy, is just not worth my time. So fuck it, let's just move on and go and play something else, is the mindset I've got regarding that. Now, I want to give my honest opinion of the mod. This is kind of part two. I, as a kind of, let's phrase it as a presenter, I feel like in a lot of ways I present these mods, which is, I think all YouTubers do. I'm not a critic. I've never claimed to be a critic or reviewer or anything like that. I play the mod. We have funny times with it. We interact with it in funny ways. My modus operandi is to keep an optimistic approach to it. As someone who watches a good amount of YouTube, I know that when the person presenting it or the person engaging in the game is having a fun time with it, and it's not all entirely negative, then it is generally a much more enjoyable experience for the viewer. I think that's just as expected, right? So for me playing this mod, I definitely dulled down a lot of my opinions on what was going on, because I didn't want to be constantly framing it in a negative light, because that negativity would have eventually transferred into, as I phrased it in Discord, it would have gone from, haha, look at how bad this mod is, into, well, why are we even playing this mod at all? And how many episodes can you really stretch that negativity out before you guys watching that would have been, the knock-on effect would have been inherent to each episode? So I definitely dulled my own opinion on that, but simultaneously, I don't want to be disingenuous, and this was kind of what led me to make this video. I want to present content in that kind of fun, optimistic way, you know, where we are, ultimately, it's just a fucking video game. It's an electronic toy for grown-ups. That's all this is, and all the drama surrounding it. And even this video, I'm well aware of the meta aspect of even this video is contributing to that in some way. But I wanted to discuss this more about the future of the channel and kind of how I present content in the future, more than about that mod and the drama surrounding it, because I don't give a fuck about that mod, which is why we're moving on from it. But the issue definitely comes from the fact that I muted my own opinion about something that is obviously now, I think it's fair to say, more or less reviled at this point. It's certainly getting slated everywhere, on every platform, Discord, Twitter, Reddit. I was just casually scrolling through it. I think I've seen half a dozen references in the past 5 minutes about how terrible this thing is and the events surrounding it. And now, as someone who didn't, I didn't specifically voice my opinions because my opinions on it are negative. I don't think it takes... I think anybody with eyes and ears would be able to ascertain that mod was maybe not the highest quality. No, I specifically obviously didn't say that because, again, I wanted to keep it optimistic and I didn't want to dissuade you guys from enjoying the content that was there. And ultimately, I just wanted to have fun with it for what it was, not knowing what it actually was past that first point. So, what this kind of brings me to this weird crux now, where I have to kind of consider maybe I should be a bit more honest about these things as we're playing them. Maybe I should have said, "Wow, this mod is very bad" during an episode. Sure, it might have put some people off, but now I'm in this weird position where I'm almost kind of the guy that didn't criticize a mod that is arguably... What's the best way to phrase this? It is more bad than good, and I don't want to be the guy that, was almost kind of very myopic to that in some ways. So anyway, the mod itself, let's discuss my actual opinions on it, now that we're not within the bubble of a Let's Play that, I was enjoying the gunplay, but I think the things I was enjoying are inherent to Fallout and aren't part of that mod at all. I would argue that the mod only detracted away from what we saw. Don't get me wrong, there are some things that I'm going to go on to praise in a second. My honest opinion of the mod is that if I was not playing it for a Let's Play, I would have uninstalled it following the first 30 minutes of the game. And I almost certainly would have uninstalled it. There's a definite chance, 100% certainty, I would have uninstalled it for a fact following that absolutely horrendous rescue sequence where... What was the character's name? Hardcase was gunned down for a good 5 minutes solid. The characters and the writing up to that point were questionable, and to now find out that they are even worse. God, I mean, how can you not? I regret not criticizing it. That I think is ultimately the takeaway from this. So, it's the way I phrased it in Discord, again, because we have been discussing this Discord, and that's, again, partially what inspired this video. The mod's strengths played to the weakest parts of Fallout New Vegas, and the mod's weaknesses were what are universally considered the best parts of Fallout New Vegas, i.e., the writing and dialogue in the mod was absolutely fucking terrible, and Fallout New Vegas is generally regarded and remembered for having incredible writing and dialogue, especially the characters. Conversely, Fallout New Vegas is not known for being an incredible tactical military simulator. Quite the opposite. The military encounters, sometimes the AI, sometimes the combat is very janky in base Fallout New Vegas. And that's what the mod very much threw itself behind wholeheartedly. And as a result, they missed the mark entirely from both aspects, from both the positive and the negative, entirely missed. I, as a Fallout player, do not give a shit about tanks or guns, to be completely blunt. I know a lot of people enjoy that. There are obviously a huge amount of gun mods out there are available, all sorts of tactical overhauls, weapon overhauls, gameplay overhauls, etc. that facilitate that. But for me, I play Fallout for the story, for the adventure, for the decisions, for the role-playing. And that's what it is. It is a role-playing game at the end of the day. And I think that, again, is the biggest weakness of it. If you are a person who is into that aspect of things, the military aspect, with some very few exceptions that the mod offered, take this all with a grain of salt, of course, I only played a few hours of it. There are far better experiences, both inside of Fallout New Vegas and, of course, outside of Fallout New Vegas. The issue I have, and the thing that I can't countenance, is that I was not judging it from the perspective of what is the gameplay that we are getting right now. I was looking at it as an entire package, not just in terms of the breadth of the mod, the scope, the voice acting, obviously the dedication to the craft that the team has, with the exception of that one fucking guy. I was looking at it even beyond that as someone who has made mods, who has produced a lot of public-facing content, both in terms of YouTube and in terms of modding, someone who has worked alongside modding teams, both as a lead developer and as someone who has offered kind of support, assistance where I can. I was looking at it from the fact that this was an amateur studio who had produced a voice acted, which again definitely deserves a lot of props, mechanically dense, unique story experience. And unique is a word I'm using very literally there. I'm not saying good, I'm saying unique story experience as an independent and I assume untrained team. And I don't mean that in an offensive sense. I mean that in a very literal sense, that these guys might have just, this was a hobbyist project, and it went from planning, implementation, development, QA, I assume, maybe not so much that bit, but it was released. There are so many fantastic mods that promise the earth. This mod did do that, but that's another point that I'll come on to in a minute, that just never even see the light of day. They didn't even get a demo. So the fact that these guys got what they call the full release is definitely impressive. And when I was playing this game, when we were playing the story, when we were getting all these incredibly cheesy, cringeworthy dialogue moments, that was always in the back of my mind. And again, I feel like a lot of that is down to the fact that I have produced a lot of forward-facing content, that I have done those mods. And I think I've got an appreciation for that should not be used as bonus as a bonus to the developers when criticizing content, because nobody cares about that type of thing besides me and of course people in similar situations. I should have really detached from that and judged it as it was being presented, because that is something that again, as a YouTuber, I have to consider, that when I make these silly animated intros or whatever, people don't see the frame by frame keyframing and animation that goes into moving a Rimworld's character's mouth around or face around, or the audios, the many takes of audios it might take just to have some characters make a silly Animal Crossing-esque noise. Who don't see that? They see 15 to 30 seconds of a funny intro and they say, oh, that was pretty good, let's get on to the gameplay. So it is some ways quite difficult to divide myself between that point of view, but also as someone who is here to just purely consume what is presented. Maybe this is why I wouldn't make a good reviewer in hindsight. That's also why I'm not a fucking reviewer. When looking at it in a bubble, away from, not even in a bubble, but as presented without looking outside the box, it was a poor experience. And again, I didn't genuinely present that in a video, because there were many times where I immediately went into the Discord moderation chat and I was like, my God, this game is bad. And there were times where I'd stop recording. I'd say to Elise, I've just about had my fill of that mod, because holy shit, it's terrible. And I wanted to carry on for the people that were actually genuinely enjoying it. And I tried to present it the best light I could. But in hindsight, was that really the right decision? Because again, now I'm the guy that fucking didn't apparently pick up on the fact that this was terrible. But behind the scenes, I was being very heavily critical of it. I think there's a time and a place for it. And I think the time and the place for that was approximately 45 minutes into the first episode, where things started going a little... As I said on Discord, again, another thing that I pointed out, as I said on Discord, when the first thing you see, when you get into a van, even before the mod is started, you know, the van that transports you to the first area of the mod, and there is a used condom on the floor, that should be the first red flag of a sea of red flags that I laughed off at the time. Again, not realizing the other implications there. So the other thing for me as well is I'm quite committed to finishing a series. The only time I never finish a series is when there is quite literally technical limitations. Say a mod updates and everything breaks, if a save game is destroyed. Even in those situations, I've gone back and done a second attempt or a third attempt in the case of, say, Darkest Dungeon. And Prison Architect, actually, now that I think about it, also had that save game error where I had to basically redo an entire episode's worth of content. I don't like leaving things half-finished. Again, even if there's only half a dozen people watching all the way to the end, those are still half a dozen people who are invested. And I want to, you know, complete it both for them. And to say that I've done it and to have that full archive thing, especially for this channel where I really just don't care about numbers or anything like that. It's never been my concern with here. I don't check the analytics. I don't care how much it earns. I wouldn't even be able to guess at that right now, to be honest with you. I just don't care about that type of thing with this. You know, this is just somewhere where I can produce content as a warm-up, or, you know, do these complete series or play nostalgic games. But with something like that, there should have been more criticism, and I appreciate that now. But I think that's all I really want to say. Just a little bit of introspection there with regards to that mod and why I've scrapped it. Honest opinions. And why I didn't initially give that at the time. So, but I want to have a discussion about this. I genuinely do. So if you've got any comments that you want to leave about that, I'll try and respond to them as and when I get a chance to. And again, I'll be in Discord kind of discussing it as well a little bit. And we'll see. I don't know. We'll just see how it goes. And you never know. And I'm quite optimistic about it in the future. But I'm hoping that at some point we will see, just from the perspective of, again, the optimistic modder who enjoys content for things I enjoy, bizarrely enough. Maybe one day, maybe we'll see in a few months' time that there will be a Fallout Frontier remastered that we can all enjoy, and maybe it will have those stranger mechanics removed, a little bit of rewriting here and there, a little bit more streamlining. There were positives to it, but they were massively overshadowed and outweighed by the negatives, and now even those negatives are outshined by, or I should say overshadowed by, this whole controversy that's kicked up. So, real shame. But I'm optimistic. Hey, I'll keep an eye on it. Maybe we'll come back to it one day. I'll probably just do a regular Fallout 3 and a Fallout New Vegas playthrough at some point on this channel. Obviously modded. What am I, a coward? And then maybe then we'll move on to mods like the Frontier, maybe mods like Nerim and Enderal that came out for Oblivion and Skyrim respectively. But that's another thing that we can have a talk about in the comments anyway. That's all. Just some kind of final bookending thoughts there, because I wanted to not leave a series in the dust without explaining anything about what was going on.